Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back after lunch. I hope you enjoyed your lunch and didn't drink too much and get too sleepy this afternoon, because there's a lot of great content. Sorry it's me again, but I promise it's my last bit. And this afternoon, we are starting off with a conversation about one of the themes, positive discomfort. Positive discomfort. So this is a feeling and an opportunity for me because it's very relevant. This discussion of positive discomfort could not be more timely, as I have just, this last month, made a bit of a leap into the void after 32 years working within the comfort zones of major publishing houses, Sunday Times Magazine, GQ, and Wallpaper. I've made a leap to go out on my own, do it on my own, and set up my own design agency. Gulp. We have a missing slide, I think, but never mind. So gulp, positive discomfort. I must confess that this term, positive discomfort, as a macro trend, was very new to me. So thank you again, WGSN, for the revelation. And it has made me think. Looking back on my career in the comfort zones, I have actually had an attitude of positive discomfort without really realizing it. I've never been one to be complacent. I've never been one to rest on my laurels, perhaps because I've never really had many laurels to rest on. I've always been inclined to take some risks, break some rules, so long as you know them, of course, and always try to push the envelope. But of course, I was not born with this attitude. It was not nature, it was nurture. I was very fortunate to be inspired by key mentors, teachers, art school lecturers, and my colleagues and bosses in my first job. My first job was the Sunday Times Magazine. And at that time, mid to late 80s, there was a mood of creative rebellion within the art department. I started as a junior designer, making the tea and cleaning up layouts. But there was this feeling of creative rebellion, a feeling that it would probably be irresponsible to not make the most of this very incredible, privileged position of working for such a powerful organ as the Sunday Times. There was a duty to ask questions and to push boundaries. And I remember so distinctly in those early days the frisson of excitement coming from the art department and the picture desk when discussing which photographer to commission for a particular story. And it would never, ever be a case of calling the safe pair of hands. Yes, that person would be on the short list, but top of the list would always be the person who could, and hopefully would, deliver an unpredictable, surprising result. And I can still see the naughty, mischievous look on the art editor's face when such a name was conjured up. Should we get so-and-so to do this job? Knowing that that would be a dangerous commission, that it could go terribly wrong. If it went wrong, we'd be in the shit. If it went right, we'd maybe some way be contributing to creating an important image that may last for some time. And in fact, I still get that feeling, that sick feeling in the pit of my stomach when the artwork would arrive into the department, pre-digital days, so in an envelope, and that feeling, that nervous, sick feeling, not knowing really what you were going to see when you open that envelope. And I think when you have that feeling, you know you're doing something right. It's uncomfortable, but it's never, ever boring. So after the Sunday Times Magazine, 10 years there, I had a 7-year stint as art director of GQ, Condé Nast. Now, you don't get much more comfortable than Condé Nast, and their headquarters in London, Vogue House. It was lovely. It was like an old-fashioned public school, with the managing director at the time, Nicholas Coleridge, like the affable headmaster. But again, I distinctly remember one word of advice from a long-standing fashion director who warned me that being at Condé Nast too long is like being in a mink-lined cesspit. Just like, wow, what a concept. But I know what she means. If you get too comfortable, if you stay in this very comfortable environment, of which publishing in those days was, very different now, of course, far more challenging, far more uncomfortable, it can be a mink-lined cesspit. So I escaped the cesspit of Condé Nast in 2003 and joined an even more mink-lined world of wallpaper. Now, trust me, there is nothing more comfortable than wallpaper world, the epitome of luxurious comfort. It's very, very nice. And you all know, wallpaper, I'm sure, a phenomenal success from day one, 1996, before my time, 5 years before my time, but 1996, a very new concept of visual journalism, of combining design with fashion, lifestyle, travel, a whole package conflated together. So successful was it that within the first year, wallpaper became an adjective. And I remember distinctly again myself as a reader, and I think it was the New York Times in that first year describing something or someone as being very wallpaper. So a hotel would be a very wallpaper hotel, or a restaurant, that's so wallpaper, very wallpaper. So it's extraordinary how something could get so much traction so quickly. Very wallpaper, the first issue. 5 years on, I joined as creative director. Always a bit late to the party, I'm afraid. But at that time, 5 years on, a magazine of such success and such standing and changing people's ways of doing and looking inevitably reaches a point where it is imitated, it's copied, that visual language gets a little diluted. And it was at that moment that was present. Maybe they had got a little bit complacent. Maybe that success led to the complacency that we have all talked about avoiding. So in my first year there as creative director, I did think, wow, wouldn't it be good if when people open the magazine, they would think, ooh, that's not very wallpaper. So again, I think that the thing that was its success was maybe becoming its problem. And also in the office at that time, those 7 words that WGSN mentioned in the morning were being used a lot. We've always done it that way. So not very wallpaper. Time permits only one example I have here, and it's from the early days of a not very wallpaper, and it was produced by the brilliant interior stylist and art director Michael Reynolds, who's been with wallpaper from day one and is still there. And my God, he is never complacent. He is very naughty, always tries to break the rules and do challenging things. And this was really just turning that luxury lifestyle visual on its head. It was quite shocking at the time and very risky, as we did play havoc with most of the magazine's loyal advertisers, I think a lot of whom are in this room at the moment. Thankfully, they got the joke, or I certainly wouldn't be standing here now. It would have been Basta Tony. Tony Basta. So anyway, I have now left all that behind. I've made a leap into the void. That's not me, that's Yves Klein, but I know the feeling. And I do feel scared, but I do feel quite excited. And I feel uncomfortable, but I feel rather positive. In fact, I feel like the living, breathing, walking, talking embodiment of positive discomfort. Thank you very much. So, two mics. To continue this conversation about positive discomfort, I would like to welcome to the stage the founders of Studio Formafantasma, Andrea Trimarchi and Simone Farresin. Gentlemen.
Thank you.
And followed by the artist and smell researcher, Sissel Tolaas, whose card I've been smelling all day to keep me energized and positive. And so to give a couple of presentations for Formafantasma, Simone, Simone is going to give 7 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes presentation on their work and positive discomfort, and that will be followed by Sissel.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So, positive discomfort. We feel it is a great oxymoron because, in a way, it is an invitation of going out from the comfort zone to explore more exciting new possibilities. But actually, before talking about positive discomfort, we would like to talk about discomfort. We as designers, we sometimes feel this feeling of discomfort when we look at some of the consequences of design and production. And a good example of this is this paper from Bernard London, who was a real estate agent that in 1932, wrote Ending the Depression Through Planned Obsolescence. Scholars identified this paper as the first document where the term planned obsolescence is used and is theorized as a solution for the dramatic crisis of the 29 in the US. London advocated for reconstructing society around a body of experts whose mandate was to achieve an equilibrium of supply and demand. I'm just now reading a few extracts from it. People everywhere are today disobeying the law of obsolescence. They are using their old cars, their old tires, their old radios, their old clothing much longer than they should. We must work on the principle of nature, which creates and destroys, encourages the process of elimination and replacement. We feel the insanity of the concept is very vividly theorized by London and praised with unashamed conviction, and implicitly delivers an accurate portrait of the horror of some parts of contemporary economy. As designers, we feel it is our responsibility to turn our heads towards some of these areas of discomfort and use design as a healer to turn it into a positive discomfort and possibly repair what is broken instead of breaking what works. At the end of the day, what is responsibility if not a form of positive discomfort? Because not only the easy or the known are not necessarily the best, but also for the users are not necessarily the most rewarding. In the last 2 years, as part of an independent design research project called Ore Streams, financed by the National Gallery of Victoria in Melbourne, now finally from the Triennale here in Milan, thanks to Paolo Antonelli for the upcoming Broken Nature exhibition, we have been looking into the recycling and the repairing of electronic waste and how this difficult matter works. Just to clarify, electronic waste is everything that has a battery or an electric cable attached to it. Electronics are designed to make our life easy and sometimes empowering, but often just simply lazy. We are accustomed to preview the world before actually experience it, to eat in restaurants we already know what they cook and how they look, and to drive in places without really any consciousness of where we are going, to read news pre-selected for us from an algorithm. Some of these aspects, don't get me wrong, are amazing, and we wouldn't be able to live and work without some of these tools. Nevertheless, we feel, as designers, but also as brands, we forget that delivering a good product or a service does not mean necessarily to ask citizens to be passive, to actually just be consumers. And if we talk about the recycling of electronic waste, for instance, this cannot happen without the participation of both designers, producers, and the citizens. Recycling is and will be a fundamental part of the economy, since by the end of the century, we will hopefully be able to produce objects, for instance, in metals, from recycled sources. You have to think that in this moment, there's so many metals already circulating above the surface of the planet, within objects, within architectures, that as humans, in this moment, we wouldn't need to extract from the underground any more metals. And electronic waste, in this moment, is not the biggest, but the fastest growing stream of waste globally. As we all probably know by now, the majority of electronic waste is still exported illegally to developing countries because it is simply easier to dump it there than take responsibility for it. Obviously, improving their repairability, the recycling, and the lifespan of these objects would diminish this growing amount of disposable objects. At the moment, the main driving force behind the recycling or the recuperation of some of the materials within electronic waste is actually precious metals such as gold, silver, and rare earths. The Basel Convention in '89 that happened in Europe, signed by the majority of countries in the world, already clearly stated the need of taking care of electronic waste to avoid the exploitation of developing countries. And with our streams, we are trying to understand what can be done on a design level to make these products more repairable and recyclable. To do so, we look into the formal recycling sector, the informal recycling sector, and also into legislation. We obviously also spoke with producers of electronics, which, to be honest, it was a very difficult partner to engage with. In particular with Fuji Xerox, who shared their recycling strategy with us, and with a selection of European recyclers who told us their struggles when they have to recycle electronics. And obviously also NGOs establishing responsible workshops in developing countries, because we have to think that if we are here designing products to be distributed globally, we should also take the consequences of that. If we have a global economy, we should also think what that means when these products end their life cycle. And lawmakers, because let's be honest, not everything can be done on a design level, while it should be addressed politically. But some changes that have an impact on recycling are shockingly banal. And I will now just mention a few, while on the background, if this is starting, you can see the images of an animation we are designing to explain them for the upcoming exhibition. For instance, just a few examples. Using black colors, which is often applied in rubber cable, is a problem because visual detectors, when recycling, don't recognize black, and often coppers contain the cables end up in the wrong stream of waste. Changing the color would have an impact. Gluing components makes them unrepairable and not recyclable. This is obvious. But we were also advocating for a universal screwing system so that everybody could open and possibly repair digital devices, and it would help recycling in developing countries where less tools are available. When you open an electronic product, there is no correct labeling of hazardous or polluting components. And you have to think that if untrained laborers are working with that in developing countries, they wouldn't know how to handle these products. Even a simple symbol or a label would help in this direction. A digital passport should be implemented in all products so that recyclers could easily identify the materials used for the production. You have to think that in this moment, plastics are engineered daily, new plastics, and a lot of the recyclers we spoke to, they don't have any idea what plastics are they are recycling. They need to have their own labs within the companies. This is much more difficult in developing countries. And we think it could be possible to apply a blockchain strategy to create more transparency of the production process, but also to track where these devices go when they enter in the process of recycling, to track them, since this is the biggest problem in this moment. The excessive and often unnecessary use of fire retardants renders plastic unrecyclable. Talking with some of the recyclers, they argue that some of the producers of fire retardants lobby for the extensive use of their products, but this renders plastics unrecyclable. These are just a few examples of very simple and pragmatic choices we could make as designers and producers to help people and the environment if we would just be willing to go out from our comfort zone. As Philip Stark stated, recycling is not a solution. It's a very tiny solution. But with this work, we really wanted to see if we as designers could do something, embracing a new form of positive discomfort. Thank you. You give me a gesture?
Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully, am I going to push? Yes, it's very comfortable to look at things and touch screens, and we tend to have forgotten we are equipped with amazing interfaces on our body that need to be challenged full-time, all the time. We are living in a world where multiple realities are taking over the real reality, and we are not equipped to cope with that properly. We are getting desperate to understand what this body is able to do beyond what we learn it should do. And these amazing interfaces, called the senses, are there for a purpose to communicate, navigate, and educate in the world we are happy to be in, hopefully. But this happiness is very dependent on how we use this body and its tools properly. The biggest illness of our time is disembodiment. We are not at all in touch with who we are because we don't use, for example, our senses properly. We are surrounded by these creatures full-time, all the time. We breathe up to 24,000 times a day, moving 7.4 cubic meter air with our breathing. Even when we sleep, we breathe. The world is full of containers containing detergent and smells and the like to cover up the world. But what about the real world? Humans, cockroaches, and rats are the biggest generalists on planet Earth. If we are placed in such context, we still can smile. We tend to think that the world only is okay if it's clean enough. We need to redefine what is clean and what is dirty, and what justifies for our rhetoric in a world of this kind of realities. And the brain is a very intelligent purpose, and it can get information, be fed with information, and figure out what to do with it. So what if we provide information sent through the nose and through our sensor in the skin into the brain? Smell is the purest information ever. It triggers your emotion and your memory in the quickest processing ever in the brain. And that's incredible. It's been very comfortable for the industry out there to place a lot of messages in containers and hoping that those messages will come across in marketing. Marketing has taken over with science left. Now science is back. I try to bridge the gap between the corporate world, providing all the knowledge of smell and taste, connecting it with the science world, and see if we can have impact on change in a positive way. So off I went in the beginning of the 90s, exploring the world, using my own interface nose. Coming from Scandinavia, I was very comfortable with the reality I could sense, mostly on behalf of how it looked, and we still rely very much on how things look like, especially in the field of design. And I wanted to figure out what could happen if I start to smell the same world. What would change? Would I become a better human being or worse? Would I be happier? Could I understand the information that provided in the surrounding I was living in a different way, more holistically? And could that have impact on me, my behavior and what I did? So I decided at the beginning of the 90s to make my nose my tool and travel around the world to explore what that world contained of true smell molecules. So in 2002, the big corporation knocked on my door and asked if I liked to work with them. I said, no, maybe you like to work with me. In other words, maybe you have to work with me. Otherwise, we might have conflict of interest. So that's kind of, well, primarily was there to cover up reality. My intention was to reveal the reality with the same knowledge. So placing myself in a big corporation like I did in 2004 changed my life. Not only had I by then a sophisticated interface called the nose on my own body, but I got access to devices that enable me to look into invisible reality in a much more sophisticated way. So these are scans of invisible realities, and these are breaking up at identification of that reality. With this kind of data, I then go into my lab consisting of 6,000 chemical compounds with what I replicate and reproduce nanoseconds of the reality I live in and move around in. So topics of concern in my work has been micro, macro level of life. In general, life and being alive. And at a very early stage, I have organic chemistry, linguistics, and art as background. I decided to be a hardcore scientist wouldn't accomplish to what I had in mind to do. I didn't know where I was heading. I knew I was heading somewhere. So daring to place my research in the context of the world, the only platform that facilitated that was the creative world of design and art and the like. So placing experiments in reality is what I do in my work. I don't work with a commercial gallery or agency. I literally travel and explore the world, place the result of my explorations in whatever context I can that potentially can be understood and help me take this research further on. So these are cities. The issues are tremendous lot. Pollution, segregation, etc. These are some of the cities. I've done 52 cities. I just came back from Detroit yesterday. And looking into what are the issues in the city, using and the different approach to it. A project I did in Oman, the biggest refugee camps in the world in North Jordan, asking children to bring me their favorite smell from their homes, and these are kids lining up to bring me their smells. And this is this display that one was then made accessible for the entire camp and is now a traveling museum provided with funding from Queen Rania Foundation. So this is a traveling children museum in the refugee camps in Jordan. This is the latest project I just came back from 2 days ago, where I was commissioned by Detroit to look into the issue of morbidity and decay in a different way. And it was supported by UNESCO, and an attempt to look into can a smell be an artifact that could be preserved for future references. Like you protect the building, like you protect the site, could a smell have that kind of function? So here is a display of 18 smells from street life in Detroit. And the smell is embedded with the nanotechnology in small objects that you take off the shell, you touch the objects, you get intimate with them, and you start to ask questions about memory, you ask questions about your own emotional attachments to those issues, and more obvious, you will get engaged with this issue by triggering your emotions. And I think that's very often what is missing. You know, we need new biases to understand and confront all these issues that surround us in politics, in climate change and the like. Could the emotional artifacts enable us to get closer to the truth of a situation, also causing action and reaction in a different way by engaging with the topic, using your emotion. And what else triggers your emotion more efficiently than a smell? So these are small smell artifacts. Detroit decided to build a museum for these small artifacts. Not only have I collected rituals and live on very important streets, but I've also been collecting language, slogans, that happened in Detroit over generations. So in addition to the artifacts, also language is a topic here. And in general, language is a topic in my world of smells. If you, in the future, will have to communicate through smell and with smell more properly, you need a proper language. So I've been investigating into how could that happen, developing different methodology how to do this. And I built up a substantial archive and lexicon now containing 2,500 words and terms for that purpose. So, come on. Another world that I've been curious of exploring is life and the body. We are all born in the smell ID as unique as our fingerprints. We tend to not want to know it, or we don't know it. We smell the deodorant before we smell the mother milk. And I think that has to change. The science is sophisticated enough to enable us to get access to who are we beyond how we look. We all have this unique identity that's multiple layered, and smell is the one that comes across quicker than any other sensory information. So the nose knows everything about you long before we at all think about looking at each other. So this is a project I did starting off in MIT in 2002. I was curious, can I smell that a person is afraid? And if so, what would that cause for my behavior towards that human being? So here I collected smell molecules from anxious men. I worked with Harvard University to detect, these moments of anxiousness. I recorded the smells of the sweat reproduce the chemical compound, put those smells into the nanotechnology that are then embedded in the walls. So on these walls, you had invisible portraits of anxious people. And taking a very discomfortable situation, decontextualize it, place it in a white cube gallery, get different attention to the issues. These people have no problems with each other. As soon as you get on the street, we have different issues. These are the reactions after 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. So in the end, it became the wall of emotions. People are showing their emotions. Towards smell, it happened very quick. This is a solid selfie of myself. I turned my own body sweat into a 10-kilo soap, and it's being used whenever I tend to forget who I am. So maybe this is a solution. We need to put ourselves back on ourselves a little bit more properly for the purpose of remind we are still human beings, unless technology might take over too quick and we end up being zombies before we know it. Preservation, as I mentioned before, is a big issue. Here is the Melbourne, the same exhibition as Formafantasma took place. And here you have, again, artifacts dealing with the indigenous past in Melbourne underneath the building. We were looking into, together with 21 scientists from Melbourne University, can a smell artifact enable different understanding of the devastating past of the indigenous population. So here is 80 artifacts on the wall surrounding this cube in the middle of the NGV, and engaging, hopefully, with this topic where the audience start to ask questions about their own memory, and in addition to that, if it's not my memory, maybe it's all about collective memory. Maybe I should remember this, or maybe I should do something with what the narrative in the smell brings across. So in this case, the objects are abstract, the narrative comes through smell. And I think there's a huge potential here. And to work with the industry, looking for other opportunities to bring that knowledge across is what I try to do with my work. Another area is the ocean. We are tired of looking at images of melting ice blocks. How can we bring this issue to mankind, to humans, to get them attached with the issues in a more properly way? So this expedition I'm conducting in the north. This is Greenland, and hopefully I get Formafantasma on the next expedition. We are going to Greenland, Alaska, and the North, Spitsbergen, the next coming years, and exploring what are the issues, what can we do with them, and taking ourselves out of our comfort zone and facing issues in a different way. I had 3 months residence at the coral reef in Australia, looking at bleaching. What is the role of smell here? Something I can do. So this is a research project that's going on for some years. Not only all those amazing replication and facility I get through working with the industry, I started to ask questions, what are those containers, those individual chemical compounds actually doing to our body? Are there functions in them that we could apply in a more sophisticated way? Among others, with coding. Smell of gas don't exist until the moment there was a huge gas explosion. I think it was in Texas or Germany, I'm not quite sure. From then on, gas got an abstract smell code. So whenever the gas is leaking, you smell it. Otherwise, you wouldn't know. So I designed a small device consisting of 1,500 abstract molecules with no whatsoever references. You have never ever smelled any of them ever before. So the only content that can be placed on them is your own experience. So if you are, let's say, on the Rocky Mountains and you want to remember this forever, we're tired of snapping our life away with our smartphone, giving it as abstract smell molecule, and whenever you want to recall that moment, you break another of the molecule and be sure you're back on that tip of the iceberg in seconds. I use this also for education. So here, the kids are learning mathematics, a hardcore curriculum in a context of an abstract smell. And whenever they want to recall what they learned, the curriculum of a week ago, they put up the smell again. And we do testing now, putting this molecule even in the sleeping room of the children, and you won't believe the result we have come across. So this is a new field which the industry are now starting to support. I've been doing this for 20 years. Nobody really took me serious. Now they are supporting. We have scientific collaboration outside of the company, signed a contract with MIT Media Lab and others very recently due to the fact that I've been stressing these issues so long. So here is a new approach to some of those incredible molecules that are primarily drowning in abstract slurries and mostly bad-looking containers. I'm sorry to say it. A project I'm working in India with self-defense, a small device you put on your arm, and whenever somebody tries to attack you, you push a button and the entire neighborhood is smelling. And this is done with this Indian scientist and chemist, and we are launching it in December in Cochin. Another one is a platinum ring that have a container you can put in a smell that have the function of either attention, distraction, or attention, distraction, and attraction. So if you want to go to a party and you don't want to talk to anyone, you place a smell in this ring, you stay around, the smell do the job. Stay away from me, leave me alone smell. We need more of this kind of invisible coding out there. We are tired of listening to small talks about the weather in most contexts of this world because other issues are very complex and there's no time to speak about. You're laughing here. Anyway, I'm getting ready. Education is a core element in my work. Wherever I do in the world, it's a must to implement some of it to the kids. They are the future, so if we want to place our knowledge in the future and in the world, we need to start with our children. So these kids have issues of segregation, chemistry, what does it mean to have a sense, disability, tolerance, and the like. What are the issues in pollution? This is how it looks like. This is my pollution. I give this to children to play with the pollution. Take away the fear. Take away the discomfort. Make reality beautiful again. And the senses accomplish that. The sense of smell is amazing. And it's fun to smell. If I do a workshop with Daimler or Adidas or you name it, I say it, nobody leaves those workshops without a big smile on their face. Reality is great. Reality is fun and should be joyful to be alive. And the only way we can accomplish this is to bring back our senses for the purpose they were there to be for. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sissel. Fascinating investigation into the power of smell. And we'll come back to that in a moment. Are you two feeling discomfort being split up here by Sissel?
Yeah, totally.
Doesn't often happen.
Of course.
Yes, we'll return to the power of smell in a moment. Some fascinating things to delve into. But Formafantasma, Andrea particularly, in your work, particularly the piece you've just shown, Aura Streams, this theme that seems to be cropping up a lot today, the uneasy relationship between design and production. Mm-hmm. And Stark touched on it, we touched on it at the beginning of the day. Is that occupying your mind more now than ever? You're designers, but you're researchers as well.
Yeah.
You are...
Well, I think we are, of course, designers, and let's say that we have half of the work we do in the studio is commercial, and the other half of the work is not commercial. But I would say that in this specific moment, we are, as designers, very preoccupied about our role in society, because, of course, we are the one that transform raw material into commodities. And then, of course, we see in this in our role, a very problematic one in this specific moment in which we are facing huge challenges as a human. So, sure.
Yeah, I think we are struggling with our position, and at the same time we also want to, let's say, take responsibility for it. And our stream was the first attempt, for the first time, I guess, to also not really looking only to the future of what is possible maybe in 10 years' time and so on, but actually looking at realities nowadays, what is the problem now, and trying to deal with it now, because as designers, we are often interested in shaping things that don't exist, obviously, but in this case, instead, we were really wanting to immerse ourselves in the troubles that are existing in the world now, because I think that's the urgency.
And in your work, do you think, again, we talk about problems, but we talk about solutions. Do you think this is a problem that is surmountable through creativity, through design, through problem solving?
Okay, so I think that for a long time, there has been a narrative around that design is a fantastic tool that can do everything. I don't think that's possible. But I think we can do things, and we are trying to take the responsibility we can within our practice. Obviously, as also Stark already mentioned, for instance, the recycling is not the solution. But if in this moment we're not even dealing with, really where we ship, where we send these products, well, then we should start from there. Obviously, I think as designers we should enter on different multiple levels. One level, for instance, was really looking at a design level what we could do. But for instance, we're also trying to engage with legislation because designers are not involved in that part. Nevertheless, our knowledge about how the systems of production works can be used. To be honest, I think the European Union in this moment is doing a great job. We read fantastic papers how they are regulating the design of electronic products and the recycling of electronics.
In this sense, like designers should be much more involved in that part too, both in making
designers.
Yeah, yes. Designers, both in making legislation, but also to make sure that like the company we are working with knows about those legislations. So I think again our role is very topical in this moment.
So slowly and surely, more involvement. Again, we talk about collaboration. I think designers do need to be at the front of that conversation with legislation. And Sissel, anything to add to that before we talk about? No, I think you're okay.
Hello? Yeah, in my case, I decided at one stage to collaborate with the big industry, for the purpose to...
Yes, so remind us from
2002.
You were with
Probably 2004. Okay. So I worked with the IFF ENC, they primarily do, perfumes and detergent and the like. And my purpose was really to challenge the knowledge and have influence potentially on how they made things, It's been a very comfortable world to be in, I guess. And, but now, the world is different and the demand for transparency is essential. So that type of industry is also now obliged to show what are in those bottles, not just selling abstract slurry for the purpose to make the world smell better or whatever that means, like what does this bottle contain and what are the potential beyond the bottle, So in addition to that, I'm also part of the European Union's Department of Molecule lobbyism and trying to influence policy and regulations around molecules that has been primarily used to put on your skin, and now with these different new functions might have to need different rules. So I try to kind of influence. Yeah.
So it's a reciprocal relationship you have with IFF, and as you said, you
it's
want them to work. They're working
for
you, with you.
I think every good relationship has to be challenging and and sometimes also.
Yes, and on a broader point, it's the sense of smell. Why do you think it has been so undervalued and the potential not realized?
It's been very comfortable to rely on what you see. That's most of all, and most is also lack of language. We tend to not want to deal with the issue of smell because it's been the take, especially from the intellectual world, as too intrinsic, too emotional. Why pay attention? Yeah. So it's been very comfortable to leave it to the big corporation to kind of take care of what is, what is out there. And this has been the case for many, many generations, and very comfortable. So, and if you look at the fashion world, very long, they primarily earn money on selling fragrance rather than fashion, and I think still the case. But do the world need another perfume? I don't think so, And the challenge now is that, we get very much aware of that we have sensors, and the industry have, taken up, and make an effort to be more transparent with the knowledge.
Because you're a big believer in conversations I've had you with, well, transparency, but truth in a sense, and masking a smell for you is so wrong, so
It
impure.
does not always accomplish what it is promised to do, you know. Very often it's opposite that happen. You know, I had a case in Kansas where there was sewage plant in the middle of town. Whenever the wind was blowing that direction, they pump it up with the cupcake smell. And the first approach I had when I came there was like, oh, can you please find a cupcake factory? And of course I found the plant where the cupcake perfume was literally stored. And I tried to block my project because that's not what I wanted. Yeah. Yes, we cover up too much, and I think I prefer to have some smell to tell the truth and have something that's fake. Yeah.
Yes.
So in a world of fake news and the like, you know, we should want some reality back.
So
and,
fake smells is high on your list of things.
Yes, and the whole rhetoric on good and bad. You know, we have to redefine all this. You know, we are living in a global thinking world and living in a garbage. You know, what is the definition of good in such a case? Yeah, so, yeah.
Absolutely. Andrea and Simone, your presentation, I was intrigued with the first slide, intrigued by all of it actually, but this concept of planned obsolescence, which has been on our minds more focused recently with the obvious cases with smartphones, whether it be Apple or Samsung, where they build in this planned obsolescence. But to see that it was first coined in 1932 by Mr. Bernard London, could you elaborate a bit on him and it?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I think Bernard London was actually a lunatic. I don't think lunatic. Okay. I don't think he was seriously relevant in terms of economy and theory, but nevertheless, he's the first person who actually uses the term and actually tried to theorize it. But what we thought was shocking is that really, that paper, when you read it now, it sounds completely crazy, but we know that that strategy has been largely applied in a lot of industries. And that's what we thought, that's why we thought it was a good starting point to look into that. And in these days, Andrea is using his Instagram account to publish a lot of photos.
Because it's quite fascinating, because actually it started much before. Actually, the first machine was made, the first car, from Ford, and then also General Motors, because, you know, like Ford was doing this really indestructible car that at a certain point didn't sell anymore. So they had to invent a way of, you know, making breakable. And from then on, you know, like everybody was starting to do like, you know, disposable razor, disposable condoms, of course.
Because apparently they weren't disposable before, but which we are very happy they are now.
Indeed. But so I think it's even coming even before than Bernard London. I think Bernard London just coined the name of that.
Came up with this term. I mean, it reminds me of the wonderful Ealing comedy, the British film, The Man in the White Suit. Do you know this film? You must see it. A guy invents an indestructible suit. It's the greatest invention ever. This white suit that never gets dirty, never gets stained. Wow, what an invention. He's hailed as a hero until, of course, the town realizes and the country realizes that it will put out of business all the manufacturers who make suits, because we will never need another suit again. And he is, of course...
But nevertheless, I have to say that, again, in terms of regulations in these days, there are new regulations coming up within the European Union, and the French government decided for the first time to really give fines and even 2 years of, I think between 2 and 4 years of jail for companies which are using planned obsolescence as a strategy.
It's a literal strategy within the...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but also what is interesting when you look into planned obsolescence, that of course when you look into electronics is not very visible, but then even like the clothes we are wearing have planned obsolescence. So textiles are already like engineered to be, you know, after 1,000 times to start to be destroying. So I think it's out of there, and I think as designers we should be actually conscious that, you know, the material we use had already that embed.
Yeah, I think if we have been able to put so much effort to engineer our things to last very short, I think we can put the same amount of effort to create a business model, for instance, which is based on repairing, for instance. So it's just, I think that it doesn't mean what we are talking about. It's not like placing an end on economy, which is thinking of coming up with new economic strategies which are much more viable and respectful of the environment and the humans.
Again, I think these are things which are coming. They are so clearly on the agenda, and have been more so on the agenda today than anything else. Sissel, back to you and the smells. I'm intrigued, fascinated by this idea that you can create a smell that doesn't have any recognizable memory or code, so you don't think banana or strawberry when you smell it. It doesn't have anything, but it can aid memory, specifically for educational purposes, but perhaps even with Alzheimer's? Or is this
but in general, smell and memory is very connected. So the way it operates in the brain is the first time you smell something, the context of that moment is the reference to stay with that smell till you die. And there's nowhere you can relearn. If your understanding of a smell is really, is positive or negative, there's no way you can really relearn that understanding. Having said that, we are born neutral. Human, cockroaches, and rats are the biggest generalists on planet Earth, and the nose is very, very tolerant, per definition. But it's very, that memory through smell is stay with you for the rest of your life. So whenever later you come across the same smell, you tend to not take it serious because it's already in your recording system, is already in your subconsciousness. So what I did in my life was to try to look into, can I make the process of smelling conscious? Can I smell consciously rather than subconsciously? And it's possible. I train every morning to use my nose the same way I train my muscles. I train my senses.
Do you do what, exercises?
Yes, I do exercise. I live in my lab, so I have access to to a lot of smells. But I made different workshops, which I also have given to a lot of schools and institutions and companies. Working on a big project with Adidas about fitness center for the sensors coming up soon in the Middle East. So it's there is a lot of ways the smell can be applied, not only memory-wise.
And just talking of your studio, we got a glimpse of it, or your lab, your studio where you work. I'd just like to know a little more about that. You're in Berlin,
yes,
and it's.
Yeah, so I started collaboration with the industry, in this case IFF in 2004, and it's extended extension of my already existing studio. So I have access to all the knowledge in the industry and work directly with the R&D in New York and in New Jersey. So
you could be quite dangerous. Huh? You have all this information.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we have a contract, so I'm very.
Look at her. She looks dangerous.
I'm very modest. I even have a website, so it's hard to track where I am and what I do with what.
But you have a team working with you,
yes, and also the advantage of working with IFF has been I can delegate a lot of the projects to, for example, when I do recording, smell recording, all the results go to the big lab to get analyzed, and I get the data back, and then I work on the data. Yeah, so no, it's been amazing. And what is also great is, I love what I do, and I'm very passionate. I'm committed to what I do, and I think that's contagious. And I'm out in the field myself all the time, so I travel all the time. Being there is half my job, and it's incredible. There's a whole world to smell and a whole world to educate how to smell, so how can you stop in Milan?
And the task of storing these documents is...
So I have a lot of archives.
Growing and growing,
yes.
I presume? It's every week more?
Yes, I have my original archive is up to 7,000 smells from reality, and then there was 7 years of field work, and then now 6,000 chemical compound, a lot of smell formula for 20 years of work. So I can reproduce history and smells from the past endlessly for the purpose of, understanding that past. And that's also a little bit what I'm trying to do in Detroit at the moment. So go to the street and see what is happening in the street.
I'm interested in Detroit, actually. So you're just back from there? And
yes, I just got back from Detroit, and I was approached by Ford, actually. They are taking up a lot of the amazing buildings and venues in the city, and have in mind to renovate them and bring different content into them. And before doing that, they asked me to literally put my nose in there and see if there could be issues they shouldn't cover up, yeah. And in addition to that, I said, yes, let me also get access to the streets and the neighborhoods surrounding your buildings is more of my value than actually the building per se. So I was working with people in the street and literally mapped what kind of activities has been going on there for generations in 2 diverse neighborhoods.
This is mapping now,
yes,
as opposed
yes,
to
yes, exactly.
the journey. That's
of course, yes, yeah, but and then collecting and trying to kind of preserve some.
And
of
the
those
benefit
moments.
of this will be, do they feel? What is the?
You know, of course, it's like there's references.
Yes.
You know, like if this neighborhood is then maybe in 10 years don't exist anymore. You know, what kind of references do we have? You know, maybe you have images and maybe some soundtracks, but if there can be smell memories, smell artifacts, maybe that can also bring you back to that very moment a little more efficient
Incredible.
way.
To similar, we're talking about studios and working practices and how one keeps designers uncomfortably energized positively. Forgotten the phrase already. Andrea and Simone, your working practice, you're in Amsterdam. A studio of how many?
Well, it depends on the period. So in the moment we are in 6 person. Usually we have like a core that is very stable, and then depending on the project we do, we just collaborate with a lot of different people. So it's really depending on the moment what...
On the project you have, so you have
indeed.
people you call on. And running a studio, again, I often talk to designers and architects and they say the hardest design project they have is actually designing their own studio and designing the people, the team. It's a task that gets it's kind of overlooked somehow, that selecting people, working with people and keeping that environment is probably the hardest task.
Absolutely. It's definitely the hardest task, and to be honest, we still have a very small young studio, so we haven't mastered that quality yet. Nevertheless, I think what we realized that it's most important is really to for instance, in our case, in our studio, to really think of working with different kinds of people, depending obviously on the work you
because your work is getting more varied now, yes? It's from the more industrial work?
Yes, from more industrial works, exactly, to more research-based. And I think the two things, they might influence each other, but it's also good that they run parallel tracks. What is important for us is to be always involved with both. Because it's the only way we can see our practice also continuing. We are not interested in growing. Absolutely, we're not interested in that.
I think this is the maximum that we can. We can do. I think. In
but
terms
also
of
we
growing.
want to. I think it is much better to keep it smaller, because then you can be involved with everything you do.
Because you feel you should be involved.
Yes.
Indeed.
Yes, absolutely. But also again, because we don't have any urgency of producing a lot.
So do you also send your people out in the field, or do you do most field work yourself?
Sometimes they also go, but usually the first times we go, and then if they're good, then they go by themselves.
Is there a difference?
Yes, it is very difficult when you have research-based practice. Sometimes you don't know what you're looking for, and especially at the beginning. So you need to be involved, or you need to get people which they have your similar abilities in intuitively sensing possibilities and problematics and reporting it into the studio. But we definitely are involved as much as we can.
Especially when it comes to translation. That's something that we are good at it, I think.
But that's also again a question of scale. If you get too big, you lose control, and then
absolutely,
and then
exactly.
This kind of agent out in the field working for you.
I think it's the same for you, right?
Yes,
But if there are big problems to solve, and if you are asked by bigger corporations to assist, maybe you then have to address that.
Absolutely, but then you have the support of a bigger corporation, which would be great. I think as designers, we're always waiting for the right questions.
Yes.
That's I think very important, because you can be asked very banal things, or I think we share all the same feeling about it.
You're very comfortable together. One thing I'd like to, just running out of time now, but I'm intrigued, and it's slightly off-piste, but the visual language Formafantasma have, which I've noticed through your Instagram and in the presentation here, it's so intriguing, it's interesting, it's using screen grabs, I presume, but it's kind of both, I imagine, very functional because you're just grabbing something that's
Exactly.
there, but it has an elegance and a communication power that is really unique. Can you elaborate how where that came from?
In specific about our stream, in any case, we were working with electronics. So for us was the language of electronics, like of interfaces. So in this sense, like presentation also, when we do posts on Instagram about our streams, we all the time use the language of interface that we usually use every day. So that's.
But I think we started using it earlier than that, especially for the Instagram posts. And I think it came by just sort of a functional, very quick way of doing things, and also because I think what it communicates, it's never about one thing, but it's also how one thing relates to other things. And I think that's also what we are interested as designers, that it's never about one solution, one perspective, but it's a multi-layered relationship between different things. So on a visual level, it just communicates what we generally are interested as designers.
Yeah, so in the best definition of design, it's purely functional from its start, and then it works, and it looks great as well because it's functional. Well, thank you very much. I think we're just out of time, and I'm very punctual. You may have noticed, and I'd just like to say thank you very much to Formafantasma and to Sissel for this illuminating and gorgeously smelling.
And there is some smell distributed there. So
Oh, I thought I could. A smell is being distributed.
Smell distributed there, so hopefully you'll never forget us. Okay.
So you'll never forget this, and you'll never get rid of that smell. But
Okay,
thank you so much for
can
this
stay
talk.
there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.